Hey everyone, so I wanted to show you ProRAW, which just came out in the iOS 14.3 beta for the iPhone. And so you can shoot in ProRAW on the iPhone 12 Pro phones. And so here's an example of a photo I shot of some Christmas lights using night mode on the iPhone 12 Pro. And so this is using night mode. It's doing the 3-second exposure to get more detail and compile it into something that looks nice. That's the JPEG version. That's exactly what you would have shot previously. And here is the RAW version. And you're like, that looks basically the same. And so what ProRAW is doing is it's basically doing a JPEG and RAW capture. So there's a JPEG-ish version that you can use to preview it that looks nice and everything, that has all of the modifications that iOS camera app does to things, but the RAW file is still there for apps that support it. So if we scoot on over to the Lightroom app, here's that same photo in RAW opened in Lightroom, right? And so you can see it's much darker. There's not as much detail here, it looks like, but what we can do is go into editing. I can adjust the exposure, and you can see in those dark areas that looked totally black and had no detail, they actually have tons of detail. All the data is there, so I can actually raise this all the way up, and I'm still getting detail out of the grass over there. And that's really nice. And so I can kind of raise the exposure a little bit to get a little bit of that background. I don't want it to be too much because I don't want it to look like daytime, obviously. And now you can see I've raised the exposure, and now those lights are blown out. They're completely blown out. There's no detail there in that one. So I can, of course, just drop the highlights. And so now I get those really nicely displayed there. The colors are fantastic. I could even increase the vibrance a little bit if you want to go a little bit over, but that's where we started and that's where we ended. And so, yeah, you can get a much nicer photo. And this is, again, this is a raw image data coming from a night mode photo. Now, one of the things that's really cool here is that here's another example of a photo taken with ProRAW. And so this is another night mode shot taken in ProRAW. You can see there's a little noise in the background and everything, not a ton. It actually saves a lot of that. There's a lot of detail. You can see, you can read the speed limit 25 there pretty clearly, but that's a ProRAW version of a night mode shot. And then for fun, I took a shot in Halide, which is a fantastic app. And this isn't meant to say anything bad about Halide, but this is how a regular actual RAW photo from the camera sensor looks like without all of this extra stuff Apple's able to apply using their smarts. This is the RAW photo. And you're like, wow, that's a lot of noise. It's it's a little crazy, and you're like, well, maybe it's just like you could reduce the exposure and kind of bring up or down the highlights, kind of move these things around to get the information there. But if you zoom in on that street sign, there's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there, and so you can't get that data back. And so with the iPhone camera app using ProRAW, obviously it's all there. We can reduce the highlights a little bit. You can even see some of the detail coming back around this street light there. And you can, of course, tweak these however you'd like. You can raise up shadows and stuff to get more detail out of that. Let's go into the color temperature and make it a little warmer to match what we saw in real life. And so, yeah, you just can't quite do that with this standard RAW photography. You're just not going to get that. Here's another example of a RAW photo taken in Halide, which, again, not meaning to say anything bad about Halide. Halide is an amazing app and does amazing stuff, but if you look at this tree, it's all noise. There's really nothing there. When we compare it to the ProRAW version, there's tons of detail. You can see individual branches. They're a little blurry, this isn't magic, but it's pretty darn close to magic. And of course, you can raise up shadows to get more of the grass detail in there if you want. You can boost that. Let's reduce the highlights. And so, yeah, you're getting kind of a really nice night shot using the camera app and getting all the raw data still. So this is really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what more professional photographers find with this, because it seems really, really powerful. There's tons of stuff here that you can play with. And as someone who shoots with RAW on my regular camera, on my Sony RX100, who likes to shoot RAW in Halide during the day, this ability to get raw photo data at night is fantastic. Specifically, I think about this shot, which is the JPEG version of the shot, the one that the iPhone spit out, versus my edit of it. And as a photographer, as someone who likes to kind of tweak things just to my liking, I love having the flexibility of being able to use night mode, of being able to use deep fusion to get more details, of being able to use smart HDR to get more dynamic range in my shots, but also have the raw sensor data, color data, light data that allows me to be more customizable with what the end result is, especially with night mode photos, because night mode photos, I feel like iOS overexposes them. They give me a little too much detail, so I always go in and edit them. I'd rather have too much detail than too little because I edit photos, but I have a little more flexibility now that ProRAW is a thing. So very excited about this and look forward to shooting much more with it to see more of the differences that it enables me to do using my iPhone as a camera. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you here next time. Bye-bye.